Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Easy Mini Painting with me, Christopher Ridge. And we are going to finish out all of the alternate zombie sculpts that come with the Resident Evil 2 board game of the alternate sculpts pack. This is the last of the bunch. It's just 4 more male zombies. It's the same model, just, 4 of them here. And I figured that we'll do the same sort of thing where we have a little bit of color variety in the shirts, but keep everything else the same. And we're going to try to knock these out a lot quicker than the other ones. I think that they're going to be pretty straightforward, and we're just going to be using the same techniques that we've used for everything else. So why don't I just stop talking, and why don't we just get started? Alright, so I'm going to try to keep this video a little bit shorter than all the other ones, but we'll just kind of play it by ear as we go. The first thing I did was just the regular layer of ash gray that we've done with all the previous zombies, and I also knocked out all of the bases with some matte black, just to get ahead of the curve a little bit. And I figured too, we'll try to do the thing where we try to do some more dynamic colors for the shirts. And so we'll try to do some different colors. And I think I'm going to start with army green for one of them. And you can just use whatever brush is comfortable for you. You don't need to use a small detailed brush, but you also don't want to use a really large base coat brush or anything like that. And I'm just going to go over the entirety of one of the shirts here, and we're going to do that for each of them. We're going to use a different color for each shirt. There you go, a little bit something like that. Just make sure to get around the entirety of the miniature, just so you get a nice complete layer across everything. And then I'm going to rinse off that brush, and then we're just going to do the same thing with any of the other ones. It doesn't really matter which. And then I'm going to move on with some leather brown. And you're just going to do the same thing. Just knock out one of the other shirts with this leather brown color. We're just doing one shirt one by one. That's all that we're doing. And there we go. So now we've just got a brown shirt on one of them. And then we're going to rinse that brush off. And then I'm going to use some Necromancer Cloak for the one of the last ones. Alright, so that. And then for the last one, we're going to use some mummy robes. And that way it'll just look like a nice regular dress shirt, maybe a little bit of an off-white color, but that's okay. We're also going to use that mummy robes color just to knock out all of their shoes, just to make it look like they're wearing, regular old, American tennis shoes, that kind of thing. So we'll knock out this shirt, and then their shoes, and then we'll move on. There we go, so now we've got mummy robes for the last shirt right there. And then I'm just going to go through all of their shoes, and I'm just going to touch up all of their shoes with this mummy robes color. Alright, a little bit something like that. It might prove a little bit tricky just to get to the base of this shoe right here, just because the angle that he's at, it's like you gotta get your brush all the way in the bottom under there, and so that might just be a little bit tricky, but just take your time and be careful with it, and you'll be just fine. So I'm gonna do that for all of them. I just accidentally knocked my thing into my little paint puddle here. Luckily, he didn't. The miniature itself didn't land in any paint, but need to wipe off that. Okay. All right, so now we've got our shoes covered, and we've got all of our shirts covered. Shirts and shoes. Well, I think that these guys can get some service now. Next up, I'll use some deep blue, and we're going to use that to go over all of their jeans, all of their pants. And again, just use whatever brush is comfortable for you. I'll avoid going over the belts, because I think that I will do a different color for the belts when I get there, but we'll worry about the pants first. So yeah, deep blue for the pants. There you go, that's all that you really need, is just a single layer of deep blue across all of the pants like that. I didn't worry about any of the holes or, any of the wounds or tears or anything like that. I think that will be fine, so we're going to do that for all 4 of them. Alright, there we go. So now we've just got all of their jeans on there, and that is looking a-okay to me. And then for their hair, why don't we use some desert yellow, and that way we can make them blondies. Just because I think that all of our other zombies, they've all got like brown hair and that kind of thing. Let's make these zombies some blonde guys. And then we'll also just use that to knock out all of their belts, and that way they'll just have that sort of, tan leather sort of color to it. So I'll use a slightly smaller brush just for the sake of getting a little bit more fancy detail. And I think I'm going to start with the belts and then do the hair. And then that'll be pretty much it. Then we're going to do our Quickshade, and then our Varnish, and then our Blood, and that'll be it. Alright, there we go. So now we just got their belts covered up there. And yeah, like I said, that just kind of gives it the sort of like, you know, tan leather sort of look there. And you don't need to worry about, you know, doing too precise details. You know, like they're the individual belt loops, which you could, you know, leave blue or paint blue or whatever, but I'm not even worried about that. I think that if you just kind of go over the entirety of the belt, just sort of go around, you know, with an even coat all around the side, that'll be just fine. All right, and then we're just going to touch up their hair really quickly. All right. And there we go. So now we just got their nice blonde hair on there. And then when we apply our Quickshade, that's going to make them look a little bit less yellow and a little bit more natural. So I'm going to rinse that brush off, and then we are going to break out our strong tone Quickshade. All right, and just make sure to use some bigger, you know, fat no-name brush with some soft bristles for when you apply this. And you're just going to apply it evenly across the entire miniature, and that will just add all the shade and the depth and all the shadow to make it look a little bit more natural. There we go, a little bit something like that. And then as it dries, the sort of like glistening look is going to go away, and it's all sort of going to sort of like recess into the shadows and that kind of thing. So that's going to be the sort of thing that we are looking for. And we're just going to do that for all of them. And after you apply that Quickshade to all of them, we'll let them completely dry, and then we'll move on to a matte varnish, or if you don't want to use a matte varnish, you can just move right on to the blood that we're going to apply. But in any case, apply this Quickshade nice and evenly, let it dry, and then we'll move on to the next step. And now I've got them pretty much completely dried. Now I did add the layer of matte varnish, and then I let it completely dry before I move on to the next thing. But again, you don't have to do that. If you want, you can just go straight from the Quickshade to what we're about to do next, which is going to be the blood. And you know what? I've talked about this on the channel before, and I haven't actually had the opportunity to really show it off, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it. I am going to break tradition a little bit. What I would normally do is just use Glistening Blood right here, which comes with the Army Painter Mega Paint set, which, if you buy that, you can do basically anything on this you can do anything on this channel. But I am going to break tradition. I'm going to not use that, just a little bit, but you can use this in its place, just as a heads up. And I am going to use this Citadel brand Blood for the Blood God. This stuff is fantastic. This is the best thing that you're going to get for blood when it comes to your miniatures. And yeah, we'll basically just use that the same way that we have done the Glistening Blood for all of the other zombie miniatures. We'll just take out, you know, like a flayed little brush here, nothing special. We'll just get a little bit of blood onto the tip of the brush right there. I'm going to wipe off some of it, and then we're just going to, you know, sort of liberally just, you know, splotch it around in some places. I am going to, you know, just dot the mouth a little bit and drag my brush down a little bit. And that will just give it this sort of look of, you know, dripping blood from his mouth. But yeah, this stuff, Blood for the Blood God, it's the best that you're going to get for a blood substitute. And, yeah, it's great. It's great stuff. Now, the other thing, too, is that I do want to say apply this after you do the matte varnish, if you do end up doing the matte varnish. Only reason for that is because you still want it to be nice and glistening. You want it to be nice and reflective, and the matte varnish is not reflective. So if you apply this stuff and then the varnish over it, then the blood won't have that reflective quality anymore. And yeah, you'll just kind of do whatever you want to do in terms of blood, just sort of, you know, don't be afraid to really go crazy with the blood a little bit, but also don't be afraid, you know, make sure to have a few reservations. You know, temper what you apply. I always say that when it comes to blood application, less is more. Don't go too nuts. You know, go ahead and, you know, have some fun, get some blood splattered and all that, but if you just do a non-stop barrage of just like blood all over the miniature, then it's just going to be too much. But just do whatever you want. Any sort of amount will be just fine. And we'll just sort of splotch a little bit here and there. Just some little dots. Some splatter, so to speak. There you go, just as simple as that. And we're just going to do that with all 4 of them. And again, just, whatever you feel is comfortable. You don't need to, follow any sort of rule or pattern when it comes to blood splatter. You just sort of do whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you're happy with. And anything that you crank out will be just fine, as long as you don't go too nuts and you don't just splotch blood all over the whole miniature, and as long as you just sort of have reservations about where you apply it and how you do it and all that, you will be A-okay. Anything will look just fine. So, you're going to apply this blood, let it dry, and then you're totally done. And there you go, everybody. Those are the last of the alternate male zombie sculpts from the Resident Evil 2 board game. Now, as you can kind of see compared to some of the other ones that we did, I really, really do like that Blood for the Blood God, because there's less of a sort of like pinkish purple tint to it, and there's a little bit more of a sort of brownish orange thing, which I think looks more like some realistic blood. So I really, really like that Blood for the Blood God stuff a lot. So if you can get your hands on that stuff, I would really recommend to do so. But if it's not available or you don't have it, then the Glistening Blood that comes with the Army Painter Mega Paint set will be just fine. So that's it, everyone. If you liked the video, go ahead and throw it a like. If you want to see the rest of the Resident Evil 2 alternate sculpts, which at this point is just Ada Wong and Robert Kendo, then you can subscribe to the channel. And then I think after that, I'm actually going to go ahead and knock out the most recent expansion pack for Mansions of Madness, which was Path of the Serpent. And even if you don't have that board, even if you don't have that game, you don't have that expansion, and you don't really care about that, I do have some ideas for how I want to do the paint schemes for that. And I'm going to try to mix it up a little bit. I'm going to try to do some different stuff for those compared to what I've done for the channel in the past. So if you want to check that out, then subscribe to the channel, and those will be coming up here soon. But I will not take up any more of your time. Thank you again so much for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.